Hi, how are you? It's Luna here from Barcelona, the host of the Spanish podcast Lunaticoin. Probably it's not my best day to be recording any kind of voice, but yeah, I really wanted to start recording the intro of this podcast, so here I am. Despite I don't do lately many English podcasts, I am now covering some very specific topics about hardware wallets, and I needed to talk with Douglas Bakkum, CEO of Shift Crypto, the Swiss company that produces the BitBox02. With Douglas, we talk about the dual architecture of many hardware wallets, about the difference between certified secure chips and uncertified ones, how does the seed get stored in BitBox02 in comparison with Ledger and Coldcard devices, NDAs, and also a lot about open source. This pod is sponsored by HODL, Bitrefill, and Shift Crypto. If you want to stack sats from other peers in a safe way, low fees, and without leaking your personal data, you need to know hodlhodl.com. I use them weekly. I go there, check what offers have been placed by other peers, and I take the one that suits me better. After 2 clicks, I know that sats are already on the way, and it's just a matter of time. It's really easy and an amazing trustless service. Go have a look at HODL and start stacking sats without KYC. If you're a true Bitcoiner trying to live in the Bitcoin economy, you will need Bitrefill, the service that allows you to live with your Bitcoin. In bitrefill.com, you can buy gift cards, phone refills, and lightning services with few clicks and without KYC. Follow the link in the description and get surprised by the amount of services that you can buy with Bitcoin. And if you're a Bitcoin holder and you are thinking about leveling up your security, you should have a look at BitBox02, the hardware wallet produced by Shift Crypto that is ideal for both beginners and pros with its easy-to-use device and its amazing, for example, multi-sig performance. Have a look at it following the link in the description and get yours with a 10% discount using the promo code Lunaticoin when purchasing one. I find this pod very interesting as I get to understand a few technicalities of hardware wallets. Like, for example, why BitBox02 doesn't store the seed in the safe memory chip like Coldcard or Ledger do. Hope you like it and excuse my rusty English and my destroyed voice. About the English part, I need to start using it more. Here is the podcast.
Good afternoon, Douglas.
Hi, good afternoon.
How are you doing?
Pretty good. How are you doing? Thanks a lot for having me on the show.
No, thanks for joining. It's been lately. I've been talking with other hardware wallet producers, and I was going into the technicalities of them. And first of all, it was very interesting because I think that when I started, I didn't even realize what was the... Like, I knew that I had my Bitcoins better secured in a hardware wallet, but I didn't understood like exactly how that was possible. So this road has been interesting, and I was really looking forward to talk with you to know some of the doubts that I still have about how does the BitBox02 works. But before I jump in technicalities, because this is going to be a little bit more technical talk, let me ask about you. What's your background, and how did the idea to start producing hardware wallets came to you?
Yeah, sure. So I'm looking forward to hearing your feedback on hardware wallets and try to answer some of the doubts.
Great.
But about me, I have a pretty diverse background. Actually, before getting into hardware wallets, or before getting into Bitcoin, I was actually a neuroscientist. So quite different. I got a PhD in neuroscience, and I came to Switzerland to be a group leader at the university here, at the National University. And before that, I also had some background in engineering, so mechanical engineering, but also with a focus on robotics and AI and things like that, which in turn I gained a lot of experience with coding, also with hardware that I could use for this. And yeah, and so I guess basically being in academia my whole life, it got to a point where the next step in my career, if I wanted to stay in that, was to be a professor, basically. And yeah, I was wondering if that's actually what I wanted to do or not. Around that time, I first heard about Bitcoin. This is around 2013, I guess, 2014. And yeah, that really caught my attention. And I guess there's not too many similarities between neuroscience and hardware wallets, not yet at least. And I figure just in general, I kind of like to work on things that I think can change the world. And so studying the brain is definitely one. I think Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are for sure another. And I was thinking, okay, yeah, I could go become a professor, or if I didn't want to do that, what else can I do? And I was interested in doing something in Bitcoin. And at the time, the concept of a hardware wallet existed, but there's nothing on the market. And so in my spare time, I just decided to try to make my own, because I felt immediately after I got some coins that security is quite crucial. And so I didn't really feel comfortable holding coins on my computer or my phone, so I decided to make my own. And I could have waited for others to come out, but around that time, there's also a lot of scams going around in hardware, in particular with mining. And so it was an open question if something would actually be delivered or not. And that's kind of where I jumped into hardware wallets. And I built one. I took it to some local Bitcoin meetups, got really good feedback. And from there, got a lot of encouragement to just, give it to other people and try to make a company around it.
What was the thing but back then? Because the moment I understand, like in that point, there was only software wallets. So for you to think, I want to protect it somehow using hardware, what was the key element that was giving you the extra protection being in a hardware?
Yeah, so I researched a lot around that time. I guess the dominant way to keep your coins the most secure was to use cold storage, or an air-gapped computer itself, where you take an old computer, rip out the communication to it, install Electrum on it, and then you basically use an SD card to transfer transaction material back and forth between it. And it took me, I'm a technical person, but it took me maybe a week or two before I actually had a comfortable setup where I felt, okay, this is kind of working. And I thought, okay, that's from a business point of view, that's a problem, and there's solutions to it. And so I thought, first of all, it's just I like to invent things, I like to make things. So making hardware wallet was a lot of fun. It also allowed me to learn a lot about the guts of cryptocurrencies. And so one of the very first things I did when I was making the software to run the hardware wallet was actually write my own elliptical curve libraries.
Yeah.
I wrote it from scratch, basically looking at some scientific documents about how it works. And of course, it was extremely slow and probably full of bugs, but I could get a feel for it. And so just kind of kept doing it. And if it takes someone with technical background many weeks to actually become comfortable with the security solution, then I think there's a huge opportunity there from a business point of view of making something that could help people. So time, of course, but also simplicity. Time and security, of course, but also simplicity, making it easy.
Interesting.
And so I guess to expand on that part of it, once you get sucked down the rabbit hole, the Bitcoin rabbit hole, you think, oh, this is really cool. How can I help other people get involved with this? And so I think in that sense also, I thought this would be something valuable with my time, if I could help other people get involved, help the whole ecosystem. And I guess a driving perspective of mine from the beginning was always somehow to empower people. And so I thought that was one of the big things I was attracted to in Bitcoin, is that it gives a way for financial sovereignty, basically giving power to people in the form of how to use money. And it's a big attraction for me to keep continuing also.
And from there to now releasing, now I don't know, like a couple of years ago was released the BitBox02 already, or a year and something ago.
Shoot, when was that released? Yeah, probably about a year and a half ago.
Yeah, that sounds right. So from that initial moment to release the BitBox02, and just also as a disclaimer, but I am happily sponsored by Shift. All this interview is not paid or anything. It's something that comes after doing, as I said at the beginning, other interviews with hardware wallet producers. But yeah, as I'm happily sponsored, I think a lot about how to explain the good parts of using a BitBox02. So I am curious to know how does Douglas explain? How do you explain when somebody that is in the Bitcoin scene asks you about, hey, why should I consider a BitBox02? What do you tell them?
Yeah. First of all, I'll take one step back. So the BitBox02 was released about a year and a half ago. But there's a 2 in the name. So there was a BitBox01 that we actually released in 2016. And it's been on the market from then until recently. And so a lot of the the lessons we've learned, both in terms of security, but also in UX and things like that, from the BitBox01 went into the BitBox02. And I think because of that, the BitBox02, I think we had an opportunity to make a really, really great wallet. Of course, I'm biased to say that, but I think, yeah, it's very competitive to the others, and in my opinion, gives you maybe a very good solution. I guess I could say, to answer your question, like if for people in the Bitcoin scene, what about the BitBox02? Yeah, as you mentioned, just to start, so hardware wallets, of course, are designed to keep your coin safe, and I think there's a lot of people who believe in this concept that there's a trade-off between security and simplicity. I don't believe in that. I think that's a false dichotomy, and I think a hardware wallet is basically designed to try to give you both security and simplicity, and I think the BitBox does the best at that. And so what that means is, under the hood, I have a lot of confidence in our security model. I think it's really cutting edge and state of the art. I guess we'll get into that in a little bit later. But also the BitBox experience. So using it, we spend a lot of time focusing on trying to make it as intuitive as possible. And we get some pretty good reviews for being a really great thing for new users, including some of the features like the micro SD card for backups to give you instant backups. Also the touch sensors, the touch buttons for a very innovative user experience, a fun user experience, I think. And so there's that aspect, but then also we think the BitBox can grow with you. So what that means is there's a lot of advanced features also hidden away for experts, such as coin control. We were one of the first to have the option to connect your own full node for better privacy. Also hidden wallets and multi-signature setups and so on and so on.
Good. It reminds me to myself of the kind of things that I say, because this is what I believe, that it's one important thing for me is this part that you can grow with it. No, that it has the easy part for the beginners, but also in the recent article from Jameson Lopp about multisig, it also performed amazing. Even the BitBox one performed amazing. So yeah, it's a hardware wallet that you can use from the beginning till whenever you want. No? after this little introduction, I want to jump into some more technical things. So maybe if somebody is at the beginning of the Bitcoin journey, can be a little bit lost. But these are basically the doubts that come to me, and I think that you can answer me them. The BitBox02 has a dual architecture with a general purpose MCU and a secure chip. And sorry, in words of Staticus, he said something like, we think it's safe to say that physically protecting the data in a hardware wallet without using a secure chip is a lost cause. How would you explain why it's so important to use a secure chip in a hardware wallet? Because just as a reference, we have few others in the market that don't use any secure chip, and they just have like a single architecture, not dual. They have only the general purpose MCU, and there are others, of course, that are using the same architecture as you do. How would you explain how important is it?
Yeah. So Staticus, he's a member of our team in our company, and I would fully agree with him that a secure chip is quite important. Yeah, as you mentioned, some other wallets don't have a secure chip. They only have a general purpose microcontroller. The idea there is that the general purpose microcontroller allows you to have open source software, which is also very important for security. But a secure chip, it provides you some extra physical security in the sense that someone taking advanced lab equipment will have a very hard time to try to extract secrets from the device. And so if you look at, so Trezor, for example, they only have a general purpose MCU. I think they do a really great job, but I think that's an issue, and I think they're also looking into it for the future. And they even state that their threat model or the possible threats that they protect against does not include physical theft of the device. And so if you have, and to me, I think if you have a hardware wallet, that's kind of one of the most defining features is that even if someone steals it, your coin should still be safe. And the problem there is that general purpose microcontrollers are just not designed to keep the secrets secret or keep whatever code you have on the chip secret. And so you still need some expertise, some experience, but it's possible to outsource this where there's different companies around the world in some locations where it's legal to do reverse engineering, where for a service you can pay them some money and they can basically extract all the bits out of the general purpose microcontroller. And so then, of course, if you have a secret on there, the secret, someone can find it. So that I guess that's to answer that specific question.
Yeah, and just to continue on this topic, the Ledger guys, they are very interested in differentiate secure elements from safe memory chips, as they call. They say basically that the first secure elements are certified, and they have this kind of I don't know how to say it in English, but certification EAL5+ in their case. And they are tested by security labs, etc. And then there is other kind of secure chips, like the ones that you do, that as far as I know, they are not as certified as theirs. But basically, they are the only ones who make this differentiation and want everybody to know that there is different kinds of secure chips. How important is that differentiation? Is really that important as they want us to believe?
I would say this is a more complex topic, I guess. So I personally believe that if you can get the physical security from a secure chip, a secure element, or a safe memory chip, that's really the benefit. And so it's an open question if the certification itself changes that situation or not. And so, in some ways, maybe it does, because it goes through a robust laboratory testing to check certain things. But I think in certain other ways, it does not, in certain crucial ways that we thought it did not. And that's why we chose to go with the chip that we have. And so this is in I guess, two main ways. One is with openness, and then another is with I guess the social effects around what a certification means. So I can explain both of those. Maybe the social aspects to start there, since that's a bit more abstract of a concept, or at least the words. So in order to have a chip certified, you have to go through the certification process, and that's not simple. It's quite complicated. And just to be clear, this is for the secure chip itself. It's not for the hardware wallet. There's no hardware wallet that have actually gone through this process. And the secure chips, the secure elements, the ones that are certified, they have to go through this process. The process can take a year or longer. The process can cost $1 million or more. And so it's not something that's small. It's something that's big. And then this is a big reason why the manufacturers require NDAs, because they don't want these trade secrets to get leaked out. So their data sheets under an NDA. Any code you write on the device itself is under NDA. So this is why Ledger can't open source, even though they publicly say that open source is the best way to go, if they can. And the big problem here is, okay, what happens if there's a bug in this secure element? And so there's published cases of this happening in the past where a certified device has a bug and it just doesn't get fixed. And the reason for this is because depending on the bug, and oftentimes it's in the hardware implementation of cryptographic libraries, it would take a lot of money and a lot of time to replace it and fix it. And if you do change it, you have to redo the certification process. But if you don't fix it, you don't have to redo the certification process, and you can keep the certification. And so, in my opinion, this is just a complete no-go when it comes to cryptocurrencies. I think if you're dealing with ATM cards and things like that, it's okay, like traditional banking, because in traditional banking, if something goes wrong, someone drains your funds from your account, you can reverse it. You can get it back. But in Bitcoin, if someone drains your Bitcoin account, it's gone. You're not getting it back. And I think when it comes to cryptocurrencies, software, hardware, there needs to be a higher level of robustness, I guess. And so this situation where the certification, this NDA social aspects make it difficult to fix bugs, to me is just a complete no-go. And so the other aspect I mentioned was like open source. And so as I hinted at, or as I said, the NDA causes code to be closed source. And it's similar a little bit to the hardware aspect, but also if you look at any security expert, open source is superior to closed source because you can get more eyes looking at code, and you can get better code review, and so on. And so the cryptography we use in the BitBox is all code that's been thoroughly publicly reviewed by academics and the public. It's been around for a while. It's proven to be very, very secure. And so that's the code we want to use, and that's the code that you can use on an open source general purpose microcontroller. So you could throw this code into a closed source chip also, but the secure elements typically have very small memory. And so you're not going to be able to fit in like the Bitcoin ECC curve, for example, which is by far the most proven, the best library out there. And even if you did put it in, there's no one to check to see if what you put in is really what you said you put in. And so it's easy to have backdoors in there. I don't think Ledger would ever purposely put a backdoor into their devices. I have a lot of faith in them in that sense. But it doesn't mean someone could go rogue and change the code and stick it in the device and maybe have a hard time detecting it.
Basically, using a closed source hardware wallet, you have to trust and it's against this motto, don't trust, verify.
Yeah, that's true. I should preface it by saying that I guess part of our motto is to try to remove trust as much as possible, so that our users don't have to trust anything, including us. But there's always some. If you make hardware, there's always some aspect of some minimal amount of trust you need to show to the developer, because even if everything you say is correct, you could throw in an extra, an extra chip between the secure chip and the MCU, the microcontroller, that now it does something malicious and you can't detect it. And so there's these aspects. But then that's also why I think maybe you show a picture of one of our blog posts where we have X-ray pictures of our device. And so this is also
exactly.
to try to minimize trust. I mean, I don't expect very many of our users to actually go and take X-rays of their devices and compare it, but we provide that opportunity to try to be transparent.
Okay, just to keep on this differentiation, as Ledger says, so basically secure chips with certification as a secure element, and then safe memory chips as, for example, the ones that use without certification. Do you have to, when you because you're using the ATEX 608A, did you have to go under NDA for that chip, or any of these kinds of non-disclosure agreements, or not?
So the 608A, the BitBox01 was using, I guess, previous generation of that chip family. There's no NDA required for information about that. But the 608A, when we first started using it, it was pretty new to the market, and so we had to sign an NDA in order to see the datasheet. But that datasheet was basically marked preliminary, so they just didn't want the preliminary datasheet to be released. And they later released themselves the actual final datasheet. So in that sense, we had to sign an NDA for that, also for some pricing, which was strange because it's pretty easy to find the pricing online. But besides that, there was no, the NDA wasn't really affecting us. All of our code can still be open source, and so on and so on.
It's not that, because I will bring this in. I've seen also some discussions. There is other hardware wallet producers that use the same safe memory chip, and I have seen some some attacks in Twitter, and these producers are CoinKite, no, with the Coldcard wallet, and they were attacking them like, oh yeah, but you're using this safe memory chip, the same as you use. Is somehow closed source. And then I was hearing people from CoinKite saying like, no, but there we are only storing a key. So basically all the code is open source, but it's only the key, and this is the only thing that cannot be checked. Is there any part of what is inside the safe memory chip that the user cannot check?
So yes, so there is the some cryptographic algorithms. So for example, a hash function or an elliptical curve to do cryptographic functions. These you do not know the exact implementation, and again, oftentimes these implementations are in they can be in hardware itself, so there's no code to check. But the functions we use, so we do it a bit different than Coldcard. So we don't store the seed there, but I can explain that later. But the functions we do use, which are minimal, is a hash function, a key stretching function, and those are standard algorithms, basically standard way to do it. And so we went through and we basically tested these algorithms to make sure that what they output is actually what they say they're supposed to output. And so there's that. I guess another thing that's not possible to check is the algorithms for entropy, for random number generators, but that's the same in microcontrollers also. And I mean, the fact that they're random makes it a bit difficult to test them also. Yeah. So I think with both Cold Card and us, it's the same situation where we're not, we don't have any, like, I guess, Bitcoin logic on the chips at all. And really, when it comes to cryptocurrencies, it's the Bitcoin logic itself that's the crucial thing.
So it's as far as I understand, is like there is some parts. If you want to have the security of a secure chip, you need to have some parts that that doesn't have the Bitcoin logic, kind of like closed sourced, and then you can open source like all the Bitcoin operations. No, so you need, if you want to have this security from this specific chip, you will have a 1% or some part of the code that will be closed sourced.
Yeah, pretty much, yes.
And something also you were talking about, like the different approaches, no? People, producers using secure chips, we have different approaches. We have, for example, Ledger, as you were saying before, that basically does all inside this their secure element, and they have like USB connections and buttons, dealing with buttons in the general purpose MCU. Then there is Colcar, for example, using the safe memory chip to store the seed. And then what for me is interesting in how you do it is you use this safe memory chip to store a key that, together with other two keys, you can decrypt the seed that is encrypted in the general purpose MCU. So basically, you are not storing the seed in the safe memory chip. Can you explain me why did you decide to go in this direction and not try to protect what seems to be more the seed? No, the private keys are. It seems that is what you want to protect the most. So logically, you would put it in the safest place. Why did you choose to do it this other way?
Yeah, it's a bit counterintuitive, but we think to do it the other way is even safer. So the BitBox01, the previous hardware wallet we had, actually did put the seed into one of these secure chips, but we decided against doing that for the next generation. And so instead of the seed there, we do have a secret, so a random number, basically, in the secure chip. And to put it simply, the reason why we didn't want to put the full seed in the secure chip is because we also didn't want to have to trust the secure chip. For example, if there's some backdoor that the manufacturer put in, or there's some way to kind of somehow hack it open and get the secrets out. And so we wanted to protect against the failure of the secure chip itself. And so that's why we chose this different approach. And so I guess you could imagine it like a door to your house. So like the BitBox01 or the Cold Card, they have one key. You enter it in the door, and then you can open the door. But for us, the door, you need three keys. One is a key that's stored on the secure chip. One is another key that's stored on the general purpose microcontroller. And the third one is a key that's not stored anywhere on the hardware wallet. And so that which is a key that's basically derived from the user password, which the user would pick themselves. And so
like the PIN,
that's important. Sorry?
Like the PIN number that you put when you switch on your BitBox.
Yeah, so we have an alphanumeric keypad with capital and lowercase letters where you can enter a password or a PIN. Yes. And it's important to note then that in this setup, also, if someone does steal the device, there's actually not enough information on the device itself to recreate the seed. So you can't steal the seed unless you also have what's in the user's head. And so we think, in this sense, all of these three things are cryptographically combined, and there's a lot of other security we do for some added security and depth in order to prevent someone being able to brute force the user password. And we think in this way, you can kind of, have protection against the secure chip, have protection against the MCU, have protection against someone stealing the device, and so on. We think this gives a better security model.
It's, as you said, it's counterintuitive, but it makes a lot of sense now that you say that, because probably what can be a weak password is probably the human one, no? But I guess that what is stored in the secure chip and the MCU they have to be like long, complicated parts of the key that make it hard to brute force.
Yes. Yeah. So the brute force. So the secure chip itself has certain mechanisms to prevent brute forcing, and so we use those mechanisms also to what's called stretch the user password. And so yeah, if anyone's interested in more details, we do have blog posts on this that explain it and probably a lot more clearly than I can explain it right now.
Sure.
But we prevent brute force or try to. There we go.
Yeah,
I'm looking at a screen you showing the website now. Yeah, and so we have two mechanisms to prevent brute force or try to make it hard, and that is one. There's an operation on the secure chip that just takes time. It takes a few hundred milliseconds, and so by doing that, it takes time to actually do the brute force because you need the secure element, and you'd have to run the function through the secure element, which takes time, which means you're basically stretching time. And so if you have, I forget what the numbers are, but if you have maybe an 8-character password, it's going to take 1,000 years to brute force. And then also the secure chip has a monotonic counter. It's a counter that only goes in one direction. And then once that is expired, which I believe is after, I forget, maybe a few 100,000 tries, then the secure chip itself locks up. And so even if you do try to brute force it, within a couple of days, it's going to lock itself anyways. And it's a high enough number that you should be able to use your device for 100 years before locking it through normal operation.
Okay, now I'm gonna bring in the question that I still haven't understood from hardware wallets, and I kind of understand the air gap ones, but all hardware wallets that connect on the computer, I still don't understand. This is what I'm going to ask you, because I understand how the seed can be encrypted, even if it's in the secure element or outside, or like the method that you just explained me you use in the BitBox02. But what about when I have it connected, I put in my PIN, and then of course my seed gets decrypted, no, and accessible then to the hardware wallet operations. Then what I don't understand is how does a hardware wallet protect my seed from the internet, which is in my device, and right now the BitBox02 is connected to my device. So which mechanisms, I don't know how to say it, but how does it protect this seed that now is decrypted to get out of the device?
Sure. Yeah, I understand your question. So, and the way you put it at the end is probably the clearest way to say it. So, hardware wallets, of course, they're designed to keep your keys inside of the hardware wallet device itself and not let it leave. And so they're basically miniature computers. And so you have the code to do all of the operations you need to sign a transaction. It's all on the device itself, isolated on the device. And then the idea is to basically you have what do you call it? A gate. A communication gate between the hardware wallet and your computer or your mobile phone, and you just don't you carefully control that, whether it's through a USB or whether it's through a QR code or whether it's through an SD card or whatever. There's a gate there, and so because all of the functions you need to sign a transaction are on the hardware wallet device, you don't have to, the seed doesn't have to come out of that gate. And maybe for more less technical people, kind of how that works then is similar to like a contract. It could be, or a check to send money, where you write up a contract and then it becomes official after you add your signature on it, like a handwritten signature. And so if you want to spend coins, it's very similar. So you have a contract. In the case of Bitcoin, it's where do I want to send it? How much do I want to send? What fee am I going to pay? You send this contract, this information through the USB port to the device. The device, the hardware wallet, looks at it and then checks it, says, okay, this looks right. I'll sign it now. And of course, there'll be some chance for the user to confirm if all the information is correct or not by looking at the screen of the hardware wallet and pushing a button. And if everything's okay, then it'll get signed. And then the signature is all that gets sent back out. So you don't have to send the key back out. And once you have the signature, it can't be your transaction, the contract can't be changed. That's the power of cryptography. And then you can broadcast it and securely spend your coins. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. And as far as I understand, there is no way, probably cryptographically protected, but there is no way that anything can enter the hardware wallet if it's not validated by the BitBox app or by any other wallet, because this is the other question. Okay, I understand the transactions, unsigned transactions enter the device, they get signed, and then signed transactions get out of the device, but the seed stays the whole time inside the hardware wallet. But how do you protect, like, if transactions can enter, unsigned transactions can enter the device, how do you protect that nothing else aside like these transactions enter? I don't know if I explain myself because I'm thinking out loud.
I understand. Yeah. So I guess you could think of it like a firewall. So a lot of computers have their own firewall system where you block stuff that's not going to come in or that you don't want to come in. And so you need a firewall. You also need like to verify that the data coming in is the correct format. There's nothing funny in it and things like this. And that's the same for any interface, if it's USB or QR code or whatever. And so that's the job of the manufacturer to make sure they do a good job setting up this firewall. And I would say this is where the attack vectors can come in. And this is what I guess thieves or attackers would try to attack, and so that's the job of the manufacturer to try to make sure that doesn't happen. It's probably important to note that every manufacturer is going to have some bugs. And so this is just the nature of technology. No matter how secure you make something, there's probably some way that someone can kind of look past it. But then the job of a security company, a hardware wallet company, is to make that as difficult as possible. Ideally, you make it expensive, so either cost too much time or cost too much money to actually perform an attack. That attacker would just say it's not worth it and give up. That's the whole goal. But it is important to note that bugs are found in devices, and I would say, given that, the secondary factor for a manufacturer is that they actually have the technical capabilities to identify and fix these bugs actively and proactively.
It's interesting how you're saying, because you mentioned in part of your explanation that doesn't matter how do you communicate, if you use QR codes or USB. At the end, all hardware wallets, air gap or not, they will have a point of communication, or a micro SD is also a way of communication. So I see that there can be many kinds of malware going through USB, also going through micro SD, and so on. What do you think about Bluetooth as a way of communication?
Yeah, so just to hit on that point, I think no matter what communication protocol you use, QR codes, SD card, Bluetooth, USB, there is communication occurring. So I think, to me, air gap is kind of a misnomer, because you can't have something truly air gapped because you do need this communication. Basically, the difference between a QR code and USB is just the bandwidth, but you still need information to flow back and forth. One of my colleagues, our lead engineer, who has a couple of blog posts on some bugs we found that we were responsibly disclosed to others while researching our wallet. He went and looked at all of the reported vulnerabilities that have been Trezor, BitBox01, Ledger, Cold Card, and so on. And basically, all of these vulnerabilities are applicable independent of the communication protocol. So these, I think you said all, or if not all, just almost all of the vulnerabilities that have been found in other wallets would apply if you're using a QR code, or like what's called an air gap, or if you're using a USB. And so I think when it comes to attacking, of course, you have much higher bandwidth with USB. You can just send a lot of just junk at the data. But the actual attacks that are going to work are typically logic attacks. So something attacking the logic of the hardware wallet software implementation, or attacking the logic of the underlying cryptographic code or the blockchain protocol that you're using. And these, then it doesn't really matter which form of communication you're using.
I have only two more questions before we finish, and one of them is about the current scene of the hardware wallets. In the past, basically, it was Ledger and Trezor, no? Then and some other, like a second wave of hardware wallets like appeared. But now it's like I don't know how to say, like a new era, no? It's plenty of this kind of air gap hardware wallets appearing. There is Cobobol. There is even like an open hardware do-it-yourself, Spectre do-it-yourself hardware wallet that doesn't have a secure chip, and many others to come, no? Passport, I think, from Foundation Devices, and one in kind of a kickstarted way was funded this Engrave. How do you see the current scene? Is there something in this kind of new ways of communicating that looks interesting for you, and you would like to be thinking in maybe a future version, or what's in your head about the scene right now?
Yeah. So I think, so to touch on QR codes again, I think it's interesting, something we're looking into. But again, I don't think it really has a tangible security benefit per se. I know others will argue with that, but in my opinion, it's more of I guess a UX question rather than a security question. UX in terms of what's simpler to use. And we go back and forth on that. We think, if you have a QR code device, something standalone that you don't plug into anything, you're gonna have to have batteries in it. Batteries, yeah, it's okay, but it's not so fun. You have to change them. You have to worry about it running out. If you use QR codes, there's extra clicks you have to do. So is it worth adding? I don't know the answer to this, but will QR codes allow for a simpler UX, a simpler experience, or not? I don't know. So if you have a USB in there, you can avoid having to click for some, really basic things, just passing an address into the device, for example. So I guess there's a lot of open questions there, and I think these new wave of wallets coming out, for sure they're interesting. I think in general, I welcome it. I think having competition, having a variety of options is very good for the ecosystem. It's only going to benefit everyone. So I think that's very good. And then I think it's really going to come down to the user experience, really, because the security, there's a lot of ideas, but eventually, I would say, there'll be a funnel to what really works. But then it's the UX, the user experience, and very importantly, whether or not a company can keep up. So keeping up with changes in protocols, keeping up with changes in feature availability, fixing bugs, and so on like that. And I think in the end, that's probably like the user experience is probably what's going to set different hardware wallets apart.
And last question. What is the hardest part to work on a hardware wallet?
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, for me, since I kind of like to play around with hardware and invent things and do stuff like that, it's fun. So I think when you're doing something fun, it's hard to know like if it's hard or not, because you just enjoy doing it. And so I'd say probably maybe some non-hardware things that have surprised me, that may be surprising, that take up a lot of time is, for example, one of the first things was trying to think of a name for the company and a name for the product.
Okay.
Hard in the sense of, should it be like this, should it be like that, and so on. I don't know. But then also, interestingly enough, a bit more, I guess, more of a funny but serious answer. One of the hardest parts of getting the BitBox02 out the door was actually the cardboard packaging. And so that probably took us the longest developmental time. Interestingly enough, yeah, because it's just a lot of back and forth, especially when you do a little bit of a custom box. Just a lot of back and forth with the manufacturer, seeing samples. It just takes a lot of time. People might think with hardware, well, you have to do the same, right? You have to do revisions and have it produced and do tests and stuff, which is true, but it's actually a lot faster. Thanks to like Adafruit and all these other DIY kind of hardware programs, it's become really pretty easy to do DIY hardware. You have the Spectre hardware wallet's a good example of that. And so you can do relatively fast turnaround on prototypes for pretty good price also. So yeah, there's I guess there's that, and then getting into the software part, I would say also the software is probably the bigger challenge rather than the hardware itself, in the sense of there's a lot of pitfalls that you could run into when you're trying to make cryptography, and the software is where the main place where attackers are going to try to look to break it. And so you have to really be very, very thorough when you do that, when you do testing and so on, to make sure you're not making some kind of simple mistake.
Interesting, and it makes me calm that for you the hardware part is kind of like the easy part, and that marketing is the hard part. So good, it's
marketing.
Marketing and making the user feel when it receives the package like the one you want. I have to say that it's it's interesting, and I did a review in the past, and if somebody wants to check it, I will put it in the description. But yeah, the way the BitBox02 is packed it makes you feel cool when you receive it. It makes you feel like, okay, it was worth every penny, not only because of the hardware wallet itself, but the way it's opening and so on. I like it. No, it's elegant and it makes sense. So yeah, it gives me calm. Yeah, no, it's truly. I said it in that review, and so yeah, it's good that hardware is not a worry. And I have to say, Douglas, that for sure there was some other questions that I maybe forgot even during this talk, but I think it was a nice. When I do the Spanish pods, I normally First of all, I'm fluent because it's my native language, and I don't have to think the words 3 times. But normally are like close to 2 hours long. So for me to have talk with you 50 minutes, it's like okay, and it's round podcast, and I think I got the answers to some technical questions. So thank you very much for joining, and hope to speak with you soon.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Likewise.
Keep in touch.
You too. Thank you.